let's just take a roll call to make sure everyone is, who all's here and who is not in attendance. So, Adam Lewis,
Here.
Tom Cry,
Here.
Cindy Slater,
Here.
Kevin Brooks,
Here.
Jonathan Job,
Here.
Ken Webb, Brandy Bishop, not here. Tim Lawson.
Here.
Linda Cash,
Here.
Brian Workman,
Here.
and David Rollins is not here. Well, thanks for everyone being here. This is by far our largest attendance, and I appreciate everybody coming. Our first order of business would be to take a look at, if you haven't already reviewed, our minutes from September 12th. If you would take a few minutes to look at those, and then I'll ask for a motion to accept, and we'll proceed with that. Does everybody, by the way, have a copy of the minutes? Okay. Okay. All right. Any discussion after looking at those? I did have a chance to look at those, and I do have a comment or two. Just a few brief corrections. Let me get over here to that. Okay, on the first page, under committee members absent, Tim Lawson. At the very end, there was an S. We could get that corrected. And then, under others present, it's got Blake Mylan. I believe that's Mylan Blake. Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah, the paper copy should reflect those changes that was handed out today.
Oh, that has been
Couple
correct.
of grammatical things that we found after we sent it.
Okay. Let me just touch the two others that I've got, just to make sure that, and then on page 4, my page 4, the very first item there where it said Brian Workman, I think that was Adam Lewis.
Yeah, I was about ready to say that. I said some of that, but not all of that.
Okay. And then on the second paragraph where it said Matt Bentley, I believe that was Mylan Blake.
Yeah,
Okay.
all those.
Okay. Very good. Thank you for preparing the minutes. And is there anything else anyone else sees? Okay. Which page was that, Ken? Okay. Yes. Did you catch that? 2 Bs for Ken Webb. Okay. All right. Very good. All right. We have a motion and a second. All in favor accepting the minutes as corrected, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Our item 2 is old business, and there appears to be none. So I'll move on to item 3, which is new business. And the new business is process, timeline, and meeting dates. So, Robert, do you want to speak to that, please?
I just wanted to bring up the point with the committee that based on the law that governs the urban growth boundary process, we have 6 months from when it's initiated to have a response back to the legislative bodies. The county mayor convened the growth committee in June, which means by December we have to have a response that we send back out, which means our clock is running. I've worked with staff here on securing some dates for meetings, and we're just setting them as is. They're in your packet. October 17th. Pardon me, I apologize. And 2 dates in November, I believe the 14th and the 21st. It might be the 7th and the 21st. So, in an attempt to avoid the 14th, that's right, because of the county school board. So, those dates are set. We're going to advertise for all those dates at this point, and it's, we have to make a decision. And if we don't need all of those dates or whatever it may be, then we won't have to meet. But as it sits right now, they're set, and the room is open for us for a couple hours each of those dates. Any questions on that or thoughts? Hopefully you can all make those dates the best you can.
Okay, do I have a motion to accept these dates? And then we'll have some discussion.
So move.
Okay. All right, do we have some discussion? I know we all have our own calendars, and I already have a conflict with the next meeting, but we can cover my place, I think. So, anyone else see anything major?
Could you repeat those dates for me?
Sure, I've got this memorandum, so it would be October 24th, which I think is next Thursday, November 7th, and then November 21st.
I don't know that it affects everyone, but the EDC meets at 3:30 on the 7th. Economic Development Council. Anybody else need to go to that?
Does that affect you, Adam?
It would me.
Okay.
That is the November 7th, the TSBA conference is
June.
in Nashville, so I would not be available.
Okay. Okay.
I'm technically supposed to be there too, but since that's chamber related and I'm the chamber representative, I'm assuming they'll just want me to be here.
Robert, would you like us to try to get a date that we can have a quorum? Like, for instance, we've got the 7th, but maybe we could look at the 14th and then the 21st. Oh, it is? Okay. Yeah, the 21st. Yeah, it's set. I think,
I recommend looking at the 13th.
okay.
I'm out of town on the 13th, but if I'm the only one not available on the 13th, that's fine.
Thirteenth is fine with me. Thank you for the suggestion. Good. We'll see if that can work. So it looks like we're going to shoot for the 24th, November 13th, and November 21st. Okay, that sounds good. Yes, the 7th to the 3rd. Is that correct? The 7th to the 13th? Yes. Okay. Okay. So we're going to stick with the schedule, but we're probably going to be tweaking it a little bit. All right. All those in favor of the schedule as presented, say aye.
Aye.
All right. All
Just-
opposed?
Just one comment,
Yes.
and I know that you're on a timeline, but with so many, not being able to attend on the 7th, it would not be my recommendation to keep that date, because I think this carries too heavy of a weight to already have the number of people who can't be here to try to stick to that date.
Basically wouldn't afford us a quorum probably. We'll try to make that change. It's important. It's important not only to meet with a quorum, so we're all educated and make kind of informed decisions on this. So it's important that we try to get us all here. All right, item B, City of Cleveland's presentation on the map proposal and associated expansion report. That map was handed out at our last meeting. It's in your packet. And I think, Robert, are you going to speak to the map or Joe? Okay. It's whatever, whoever would like to explain the map to us.
Thank you very much, Chair and Urban Growth board members. And at the last meeting, we went through and I think staff went through kind of a presentation as far as what the growth boundary had. I don't want to, and I'm certainly willing to, but going into every little line, but I can give you the context of why are we even having this discussion, and what are the concerns that have been brought forth. At the city, we've had a number, and it's increasingly by the month, of annexation requests that are outside of our growth boundary. Our growth has grown in a lot of areas right up to where the growth boundary is, and so people want access to sewer generally, and a lot of the times the answer is, and even if we can provide sewer, like, well, it's not within the growth boundary and we don't have that opportunity to bring that into the city and let you do the development that you want to do. So telling those private property owners that you can't develop your property at least with city sewer. We have found an option to, it's called annexation by referendum, that allows us to annex outside of that growth boundary. I can tell you from the city's perspective that we are not interested in using that as a mechanism to grow or to have annexation, because it's not necessarily, we don't think it's the partnership that we need. I think from the city's perspective, and the mayor and the other city representatives could share, that we prefer to be able to have a partnership with the county. If you have your growth boundaries and there's an annexation request within those growth boundaries, that means that there's a partnership and there's a negotiation between the county commission and the city council on, is this in the best interest of the city and the county? What the law says, if it's within that area, that we have to negotiate roads, public safety, who's going to cover what, and we think that that's the appropriate way for the city and the county, is to have those conversations on those annexation requests, which are face-to-face conversations therefore, on trying to figure out that. Having an expanded growth boundary map allows for those conversations to happen. If we have to use annexation by referendum, we certainly, we're not required to do that. And there really isn't a mechanism to really even have an agreement for that. And I think, so this is really a mechanism of good public policy for the county and for the city to talk about these growth boundaries. Okay. That's kind of that's the first issue that was brought up, that why we had to, and we've had conversations with our city council and our mayor. The second issue is reacting to the growth that we've had in Bradley County, on number of people that want to move here, and we're blessed with being in an area that has that allure from bringing people from north, south, west, east of here to move here and wanted to be part of our community. One of the things is that this last year we were number one out of all the counties in the state of Tennessee in job growth, in jobs that were for industrial growth. We were number one. And a lot of those jobs are still, those facilities are still being constructed. Those people need to move here and have affordable housing that we can work together on to allow those people to come and be part of our Bradley community. And I think that we're looking to the future, the 50-year view. You know, we've done some demographic reports from some of the studies that we've had as far as growth within the city and Bradley County. And our growth is going to continue. Our geography is wonderful. Our community is wonderful. Our weather is wonderful. What we have as far as jobs and quality of life are all top notch. Our values for taxes are all very good. So that growth is going to continue. We still have, you know, and you can talk to the chamber, they expect that the Walker facility will grow over the next couple decades by thousands of employees. Right now, if you go and look at the minutes for the conversation we had at the Industrial Development Board that we had yesterday, and the mayor was there, and I think Mr. Cry was there. We went through a whole litany of that we're negotiating with a number of areas of bringing more people. Some of them are in the county outside of this growth district. Some of them are within the county or within city. And what that means are that our job growth is going to continue. We have an issue in our community that we don't have affordable housing. We need to be able to build the appropriate level of housing that's going to make us a strong community for the next 50 years, 100 years. And one of the things is being able to have access to utilities, whether it's Cleveland Utilities broadband, whether it's Cleveland Utilities water and sewer. We have some other very strong utilities. The Kauai Utility District is very good, and they're expanding and they're developing their opportunity, or their sewer and water opportunities as well. So you have this not only, we have a functional process issue within the city, but you also have this economic housing issue that needs to be addressed. We think, as the city and the city council, as the mayor and the city council voted on, is that this is the appropriate mechanism to allow that growth to occur in a controlled manner of having negotiations between the county commission and the city council, and Cleveland Utilities is certainly part of that conversation as well, and figure out what is economically viable from a growth standpoint. If you get a development that's going to cost $10 million of sewer infrastructure, and if the people that are doing the development don't want to pay for that, that's probably not in our best interest. And the city has already said no to a number of those options, right, Robert? So what we're asking is trying to fix these procedural and these future economic development, affordable housing issues in this. The third leg of this is why going up the I-75 corridor? And that's economics. The city has invested, the city ratepayers have invested in sewer infrastructure all the way up that corridor that is some of the best in East Tennessee, because we have our sewer treatment plant out near Hiawassee River. All of that area has very easy, very affordable access to sewer infrastructure through that whole, from Frontage Drive to Mouse Creek, and areas that's in there is we spent tens of millions of dollars on that sewer access. And we think that it's the best interest of the development community and the county and the city to be able people to develop in those areas, especially when you have Walker that's going to grow. You have probably 1,000 acres of developable land that's already being marketed for industrial development up in that area. And I think that that's a key part, is to be able to use infrastructure that is already there, that we don't have to invest to do that. And that doesn't mention that I-75 is there and you have some road infrastructure. All right, so those are the three legs of the stool on why we are here having this conversation. Before I address any questions, if there are any, does everyone have the map in front? It's on the last page of what's given. We're actually not I want to give the thought process on where these lines came from and what is it. And we went over a little bit this at the last was it a board or committee? I think it's a board. Committee meeting. So if you go way up on, if you know where up where the jet port is, where we on Michigan Avenue, or what I can't remember. Dry Valley, I'm sorry. That Dry Valley road up there, that what we're doing, and this is about 40% of our entire map, is just following the current growth boundaries of the city. So 60.7. So what we're following is from there. If you follow our red line all the way south, we are just following what is already in place. We make a little changes down towards the south to for no real issue. Just there's I think some better lines than what were there before, and then we deviate, and so then if you get down, and I'm at the very tip of where Mr. Johnston's property is, that is on South Lee, and you see a purple line that comes out. See the purple line, that line is what Cleveland Utilities had as, and we had asked the question, utilities, like what can you serve? What's within the realm of possibility at some point, maybe not next week, but looking at the geography, looking at the infrastructure, what is the possibility? And this was all discussed at the last meeting. So from there, except for this purple line, we decided that we didn't want to encroach on the Johnston farms out in that area. So we brought it inside of what Cleveland Utilities asked for, but the reasons are more political. We felt like they wanted to be outside of some of the areas, so out there. So we went inside that to try not encroach on them. Then you're out at exit around the industrial park and out at exit 20. So most of this is just following normal boundaries, and then we just follow the Cleveland Utilities line on what they can serve in the future. So this whole north boundary, this whole red line is really a red line and a purple line together. So we're just following exactly what Cleveland Utilities can do and for what they see as their maximum district. And we take that all the way up to that I-75 corridor up to the sewer treatment. And you see, and it wraps around a little bit and comes down a little bit. Now, Cleveland Utilities lines, and now I'm up by Lauderdale Highway. Cleveland Utilities, they can serve what they can serve. They can actually serve right up to the city of Charleston, which they already have an agreement to serve with and do some serving there. We were trying to be respectful of the future growth of the city of Charleston. So we made a decision with our elected leaders to bring that line and to give Charleston enough buffer area that if they needed to grow in the future, that they certainly had that ability to grow and to do that. So that's why our line deviates from the engineered line, which is what Cleveland Utilities can provide sewer to. So we come down, and then you see that we've gone full circle. So to summarize that, what we've done is we matched most of it with just what is there now on the south side. And maybe a question is, why is that? Is because Cleveland Utilities, because of the geography and the different watersheds and also the interaction with the Coy Water District, which is out in that area, they can't grow that way. We have technical issues that we can't, so we'll just keep the same boundary. Then we just take the boundary that city didn't have anything to do with. We let Cleveland Utilities have their engineers, and I believe you had consultants, Craig, on that?
That is correct.
So the consultants outside of Cleveland or Bradley County, they looked at it and said, this is the line of where that potential growth is. Then you get up to the Charleston area, and we brought it back as far as we could from Charleston to be respectful. So again, to summarize, we had practical issues of doing annexations and growth every day. So we were talking every couple weeks on these issues, and we've said a no to a number of them. We have our future of affordable housing, economic development, providing, if you're within this area, Cleveland Utilities will provide broadband to those areas at some point because you're within, if it's within the city, if you annex in.
That's correct.
And then you obviously have access to water and the sewer facilities. So there's a lot of benefits for people that want to live in those areas. And then the third one is, again, reiterating, summarizing, that we have tens of millions of dollars in infrastructure already on the I-75 corridor that as a Bradley community, we should put to the highest and best use and not just let it sit there in the ground. Is we need to be able to use it and to maximize our utilities. And then I went through the boundaries, and that's really why this has come full circle. And talking with our elected leaders, talking with our professionals, we didn't really have any conversations with Cleveland Utilities, but we asked them and their consultants to come up with the lines, and I'm happy to address any questions, or you guys can start having conversations on how you want to move forward.
Okay, Joe, thank you. I guess we'll open it up for questions to you. So if you'd raise your hand, I'll recognize you, and you can have comments or ask questions. Okay, Adam?
You mentioned you've said no to certain requests. Of 100% of the requests that you've gotten, what percentage would you estimate have you said no to?
I don't want to speculate, but we could probably get get some information together on, I don't want to throw out a percentage, but there's been a number one, most of them have been on the south side of the community, Robert, that have been out towards down, Dalton, Dalton Pike, and that's where most of them have been.
So, I mean, even just a ballpark that I won't hold you to? 10 to 15%?
Still talking to us, you know, what would make you reconsider that kind of thing? I mean, it's ongoing conversations. Growth, as you know, is constant. So,
What percentage of those requests are property owners that are interested in selling their property versus developers that already own the property and wish to annex for development purposes?
We'd have to go back and look at it. It's probably a mix, wouldn't you say, Robert?
it's a mix. There's some property owners that are staying there that want certain services. It's all of the above, if that makes sense.
Other than the desire to take advantage of city services, are there any other reasons why people are requesting annexation into the city?
I don't want to speak for them or speculate them. I know they have the private property rights to make that request, and we don't ask why or anything. It's not really just a private property issue.
Anything else?
I actually have multiple questions, and my apologies, this is the first one that I've been able to make, but I have a couple of questions. One is being, you know, the same that Adam asked about the reason for the boundary change and the request for annexation. But is there and I would say that I don't want to be political, but I'm sure this will get there. Is there a reason that the utility services from Cleveland Utility can't be expanded at owner's request if the boundary lines don't change? Is there a written agreement between ownership between Cleveland and the city council, or is there a reason that that can't be negotiated with the boundaries that are in place now?
That's our written policy and ordinances that we've had in place for a number of years.
So what is and you're talking about the benefit for landowners, if we're talking about access to utilities, why can't there become an interlocal agreement that works between residents in the county and residents in the city that provides the same services for these owners? And then in addition to that, with all of this, it costs a lot of money. So what is the actual business plan that's applied to creating the funds for laying the lines and doing all of that? That's one question. And then another question, is there an alternate plan laying side by side for the building of schools, roads, ambulance access, all the other pieces that go into that? I'm very reluctant to say, let's go ahead and do things like this if I don't see a comprehensive plan, because without a comprehensive plan, you get chaos. And then you're trying to dig for money and man, because you are absolutely correct. The growth is here. I don't think it's going to stop. And I think that that those are just some of my questions that I have.
And maybe I'll try to address it. If I miss one, remind me if I miss one. You know, I think that's I think you make the point of pretty much what my opening salvo is as far as the negotiation of the roads and infrastructure and all those things. That's why we have the legal ability that we can go and do these annexations without the county's approval. We don't think that's good public policy. We would rather sit in a room with Cleveland Utilities, the county commission, and say what's in the best interest of the Bradley community and negotiate who's going to take what roads, who's going to serve this from a public safety standpoint, We need to talk about schools. We can talk about schools, all of those things. And that's really what the driving force of this is to have a real conversation and continue the conversations instead of the city going out on its own and just doing annexation by referendums, which doesn't make sense. Is we think it's purely a negotiation and finding and arriving at the right decision between Cleveland Utilities, the Bradley County Commission, and the City of Cleveland for what, because we don't pick which properties. The properties come in. There may be one that's way out that's cost prohibitive. It just, we have issues in a lot of those instances that we're not in a position to provide fire services or police services, and we're gonna say, and we have, right, Robert? Yes. No, and some of those are just, and I think Robert's saying is, some of those are just phone calls, and Robert just says, we're not able to provide trash service, solid waste service, all these things, and we just say, we're not interested. And because it's just not economically feasible to be able to do that. So, so I think that was your middle question, and are there other pieces of the question?
You know, the finance side of it, because I know very definitely with annexation and with growth in general, you're looking at having to produce tax revenue to pay for services, which is logical to me, but maybe not to everybody. But in the business plan, when the properties are within the boundaries that are drawn, so until that property is annexed, then there is no tax base, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but there's no tax base coming to the city. It would still remain in the county until the property is annexed.
Yeah, there's reverse arguments, or so the evaluation that cities have, and this isn't a City of Cleveland issue, this is a municipal organization all across the country that we have to work through, generally working with counties, is certainly there's value. Yes, if we annex, we get some property tax value out of that. The goal is to just be able to pay for those services
Right.
that those residents incur for that. But the other part of the question is, if that development happens without it being in the city, we still have to provide services, because almost every single one of those people will work in the city. They will go to the city parks. They will go to there, and we provide services to there. We think it's a matter of good public policy that we try to make sure that our infrastructure inside the city is an infrastructure for the next 50 years, that we can actually support all the businesses and there. If you have people that are not paying taxes into the city, then you run into issues where your infrastructure degrades, your public services degrade, and we're just looking for value on both ends of whether to annex and not annex, and sometimes it just doesn't make sense.
So just for clarification, right now, there has not been a situation where there's been a meeting between the city and the county, whoever that may be, to talk about plans for how do we, let's just say that this, all of this growth pattern happens, but we still don't have a plan for a collaborative plan, actually, for schools and roads and all of that. I struggle with not having a plan of what does the future look like when you're looking at expanding the boundary to the stretches that we are.
And part of the, and I certainly don't want to speak for the Mayor Davis or the County Commission, is is that that's part of that you can't, you do, because there is a county master plan that was out there that was done 15 years ago, 13 years, so there is a plan out there.
Mhm.
I don't think the county
Right.
has adopted it, which you could adopt at any time. But, so there is a plan 13 years old, but I think part of this discussion is, once you know where the growth areas are, and we've already committed and we've already budgeted for to do a master plan with Bradley County, once you know where the boundaries are, then you can plan for what the growth levels are. This is the opening decision, and then you figure out, well, how does this work? And as part of the negotiation and the conversation to figure out a lot of those issues. So I think we've, as far as the next master plan, I consider this the first step of that master plan. Do you have any agree with that?
No, yeah, we have to set the border of what we're planning for, and that's what we're attempting to do. Number one is set that boundary, what's the city, and then, it's this percentage or whatever. We look at what's within that. It matches relatively close to what the MPO considers the urban growth boundary. The MPO has a 2045 regional transportation plan that talks about road infrastructure
Right.
needs based on population projections. Those are all things that we already do have that'll be used as we continue to plan with our county partners to go forward.
And I think this is my one of my last things with, so with it, could you tell me the percentage or the completion rate within the current boundaries that we have, where services have been and are laid, and when that would finish within the current boundaries?
I just want to make sure I
So,
understand your
the-
question. I'm not
the-
fully understanding your question.
The current growth boundaries that we already have.
Okay.
I know that there has to be a service plan of completion of when that will happen. What percentage of that is completed at this point?
Yeah, the service plans, and forgive me, I'm trying to answer your
I think it's
question.
just annexation of the properties that have been annexed.
Yes, every annexation has a service plan, a plan of service, that when indicated, it talks about who's gonna provide all the services. And then, and all of them are provided on day one, unless I think that's it. Trash, police, fire, so 98% of them. The only one that I believe that lags is the sewer, which they have an 8-year period to be able to bring sewer to that location, and that's a state law.
I only know of maybe 2 annexations where that's not been completed at this point. Maybe there's a few more, but not many. It would be a fractionally small number.
Thank you.
Okay, Tom.
This is my first meeting, and I'm not familiar with the 2 representatives from Charleston. Are they present, or are they, okay? We do have them, got one? None?
Yeah.
My concern is the boundaries for, I'm sorry?
But he's not the representative.
Okay, I'm concerned for the city of Charleston because they're not on the board here on their boundaries. And I would like to ensure they've had new leadership up there, and I'd like to see that the 2 representatives that were originally scheduled are replaced by members of the current leadership in Charleston, if we could. I'll leave that up to the chairman, but the boundaries for the city of Charleston, and I have trouble making out your red lines on the boundaries. How far out Lauderdale Memorial Highway does the city of Charleston go?
Is it with their current, are you asking about their current urban growth boundary.
Well, I'm assuming the red is the proposed, isn't it?
The red is
That's the proposed by the city.
The green is the existing Charleston because we've not gotten anything from them
Okay.
yet. but we're-
I think Charleston needs to be able to present their own desires. They need to grow, so they don't even have 650 people up there in that town. They need to have enough revenue to get something done up there. But that's the one thing, and Joe, I think the world of you, get along with you great. I get along with Mayor Brooks great, but I can assure you there is a lot of ill will in the county on this referendum, and I totally agree with you that we don't need it. But I would like to propose down the road before we finish that we have an interlocal agreement between the city and the county to that effect, that we won't use it. It would it would cure a lot of potential issues when we come to a vote, when it comes before the county commission. And that's all I've got.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairman Cry. We had, and I guess not knowing that Charleston had reached out to, not the people on the board, but had reached out and asked us, and we had some conversations with Charleston, and you are 100% correct, and we would be glad to meet and have conversations with. Our goal with this, and you can hear from our elected officials, that we want to do everything within reason, to assure that Charleston has the ability for future growth and to make that happen. And that's within reason, with what they can actually accomplish with their sewer and water abilities, that we as a sister community, is we owe it to them to allow them to have their future abilities to go. Councilman Webb, who is from Charleston, I believe, has been an advocate of making sure that we allow them to have their control. So we will, I think, want to have, if they're interested, to have conversations. And certainly, I believe Ms. Bishop was the representative, and certainly we would hope that they would reappoint someone and have some dialogue with this group and try to work on it.
Thank you very much. I totally agree with your statement, and I think the city of Charleston would be very interested in participating. I haven't spoken directly to them on the issue, but the boundaries is what I'm concerned about, because they need to grow up there so they can get some government grants and things.
Yes,
And that's a big issue. Thank you.
we agree.
Anyone else have any questions or comments?
I'm just have one more comment, and this is what we proposed. If people have some modifications, we're certainly in no way saying, well, this is the best map and this is what it has to be, and leave it, take it or leave it. Is that if there's good faith conversations about either adding to it or taking it back, I'm not speaking for our appointed members, but from the administration, that we're certainly open to amendments to that and having a dialogue over the next couple weeks.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Fivers. You took the words right out of my mouth. I was just about to say, now's the time for discussion, for amendments, for changes, for growth or reduction, or all of the above, or any other in between. But I would have to say, I'm grateful for the comments of my colleague, the chairman of the commission, and I understand the spirit of intent on the interlocal agreement. I think we should have interlocal fire agreements, but that's a whole nother,
I totally agree.
it's a whole nother conversation. since my house is next to Station 10 and they can't respond. Um, but I can't not address the situation of the desire to have an interlocal agreement against the referendum annexation when it was this commission that voted 3 times to not allow annexation that was brought forward by property owners. The fundamental American right of property owners to say, I would like a change, whether it's zoning change from FAR to whatever. It wasn't anything other than just people asking for a change. And that is why the discussions of what are the other alternatives for these Americans who choose to do what they want with their land. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Joe, I have a question for you. I know when you first began talking, you talked about the property down on South Lee Highway that belongs to the Johnson family, and the decision was made not to approach on that property. I have to believe, as I look at this map and I see all of the red going up Eureka Valley, that there could be large landowners, probably not as large as the Johnsons, but large landowners in that area that also would like to not be included in the red. So do you see having future conversations with other property owners to exclude them from the urban growth plan?
And that goes along with the conversation is that we are not set in stone. This line was set on what Cleveland Utility can provide utilities to in the future. If there's ways that we can work with property owners, county commission, city council, Cleveland Utilities, that we're certainly open to requests that makes sense. I think if I just think that's out of matter of fairness that we do that.
And keep in mind, I just want to mention, just because it's in the urban growth boundary, that this is a planning tool. It doesn't mean it gets annexed. This is not an annexation question. No one's getting annexed unless they personally request it. If some of these large property owners wanted to sell their property for development or whatever, that the cost benefit analysis might tell them to remain. It's not about annexation. We just want to plan for a level of service within a certain box.
Yeah, and I don't know if the feed can hear what Robert said, but it might be the most important thing that was said today, and I'll reiterate it. But what Robert Varnell said was that that what this is no annexation. This does not commit anyone to doing anything with their property that they choose not to be in. If there's someone that came and said, hey, we really don't want to be a part of this, it might be that we can't unilaterally go, even if it's in this district, and let's say there's a big property owner or a property owner that doesn't want to be in it, we do not have the legal authority, we do not have the legal ability, we have no interest in annexing someone against their will. So even if they're in this and they don't want to annex, then there's no concern with that. But there might be some economic reasons why they may want to be there. It probably increases your property values, probably, or ability to sell in the future if you wanted to, and some other issues with that. But going back to Commissioner Slater's comment is that we would certainly welcome any feedback.
And if I could add one more thing, and I think my voting record shows that I am for private property owners' rights, and I will always support what a private property owner wants to do with what the law allows every time. But I think, you talked about the county commission and the city working together. I think by expanding the urban growth boundary, that it enables more contiguous annexation instead of non-contiguous annexation. And so therefore, the county doesn't have a say when it's contiguous annexation, because it doesn't have to come to us. Only the non-contiguous annexations come before the county.
I'd like a little clarification on that. It's my understanding, is working at the utility, and correct me, Joe, but this boundary, urban growth boundary, affords conversation between the city and the county. And I think in our first meeting, that you and Mr. Cry had the conversation that I think I heard 6 times annexation was brought up within the urban growth boundary, and the two bodies work together. And I heard that you all consensus came together and you both worked together to approve those. Is that correct?
As far as I know, every one that we've asked for has been approved.
So, but what Ms. Slater brought up is right now, I understand it really doesn't matter if anybody with property can come to the city, and by referendum, they can request to be brought in, whether they're in the urban growth boundary or not. Is that correct? If they're,
Say the question again.
if
I just
if
wanna
they
make
are
sure.
not in the urban growth boundary, like Dry Valley Road, okay, they're not in, anybody in Charleston, anywhere can petition technically to the city of Cleveland to be brought in, be considered for annexation.
That's correct.
Okay. But if they were in the urban growth boundary, that could not take place. And then you would, as I heard you say, you would have conversations, that would force you all to have conversations and work together with the county to provide services. Is that correct?
With an extent, is it forces a conversation with the plan of service, it forces a conversation between the county commission and the city council, Cleveland Utilities, the sheriff's department, the police department, the fire department, both fire departments, is all those people technically would have a seat at the table to figure out what's in the best interest of their organization. So it creates the dynamic that is the most healthy for our Bradley community for moving forward.
But if the property adjoins a piece of property that it's already in the city limits, there's no discussion with the county.
From a staff level, we have discussion on every annexation. Adam and
But
I.
it doesn't come to the county commission.
No, that's correct.
If it's contiguous, it doesn't come to the county commission.
And the technical reason is because the provision in the state law is obviously for non-contiguous. But I think from a public policy standpoint is because if it's contiguous, your roads already connect, your public safety services are already there, and it's the orderly way which you have in the technical municipal field, you would have good growth, which is stacking your properties. And I'm trying not to say smart growth, but it's really the appropriate growth, and that's why there isn't a conversation. It's a private thing, is because the roads are already taken care of, public safety is taken care of, and that's why the state legislature. Now, if you go out and you're not contiguous, then you have issues that people are driving on county roads to get to a piece of property, and the county still has to take care of the wear and tear on them. They may have issues with public safety, and those are the conversations that are very important, that I think in the 6 times that we've done it, we've reached a favorable inclusion between the county and the city. And it might be more.
Mr. Chairman. My understanding has always been when it comes to the interlocal agreements, it's not, the commission at that point is not voting to approve or deny the annexation. That decision is made by the city council. The only decision that's being made by the county commission at that point is an agreement to the plan of services. Agreeing to who will take over emergency services, who will take over infrastructure services.
Yep.
So at no
Which
point,
by law, you can't have an
Yeah.
annexation without a plan of
Correct.
service.
so it in effect, in theory, could kill an annexation request because, as you mentioned, it is required. But at that point, the property owner would have other recourse if they wish to.
Well, we always work towards
Right.
consensus, and
It's never
and don't-
happened, and so my hope would be that it never does. I feel like we've reached a point where, we can continue to have philosophical discussions that probably won't change many opinions up here or out there. But we've got some nuts and bolts that we've got to start putting to this. I'd like to see us, I know that I don't know where it falls in the timeline, but I know that part of the requirement for this plan is that public hearings are held. And I don't know that there's at least a minimum of 2 that's required. I don't think there's a maximum. But as I think it was Ms. Slater mentioned, we've already heard that at least one large property owner has had an input on where these lines are drawn.
There was no direct communication. We looked back at the conversations that happened the last time we did that.
Okay.
We've had no direct conversation
Okay.
with them. We look back at the record and
Yeah.
say, well, we'll just try to avoid that conversation.
Well, so either way, I hear what you're saying. Either way, as a voting member of this committee, I don't know that I feel comfortable putting forth something without having heard from the public. And so, in whatever format or method we need to do the following, I would propose that we make this map publicly and widely available and accessible online. And that we encourage and set a time for at least one public hearing before we, as a body, consider what we're going to do. Because as I look at this map, I'm generally not against the idea. But I also don't want to just rubber stamp something if there are property owners out there that, as we said, don't want to be included in the growth boundary. Never mind the fact that they would still have a choice, even if they were included, whether or not to be annexed. But I think that context is going to be important. It should be important for all of us before we make a decision. So I'd like to propose or ask that we also look at scheduling a public hearing, and maybe it's one of our regular meetings. I'm not suggesting we add extra dates, but maybe we take the next an official, take one of our official meeting dates and hold a public hearing. The last thing I want to do is take a vote and then after the fact be tagged with the fact we didn't give people the opportunity to participate in this process.
Thank you, Adam. All I can do is call on my experience from the last time we went through this process. And there were 2 meetings, 2 public meetings that I recall. Those happened and were scheduled at night to afford the public time to attend those meetings. And so there is a formal process to do that, to set those meetings. We'll set some dates, times. There were people that voiced concerns and properties were pulled. If you look at the map now, there's some white areas in the blue, even within the urban growth boundary, kind of on the southwest portion. So we will definitely make that happen. I do have another, Brian.
This question's for Bentley and Robert as the two planners. And I haven't been on committees and done all this before necessarily for this type of thing. I'm with the chamber, so mostly what I care about is a new industrial park and where to stick it. But my question is, this plan really doesn't change annexation all that much. People can still ask for it. You can deny it or approve it. It really just points your focus on where you're looking to where you're going to put services in the future, or where you could put services in the future if asked.
Yeah, when we do a consolidated plan as a county, city, as well with the city of Charleston, it gives us the ability to say that it's likely that development that occurs within this area the city's gonna have to be prepared to service that. The county's gonna have to be prepared to service this, et cetera. So, it's a tool for us in planning more than anything. And when we talk about industrial parks and that, it's what's called an urban level of service that's required. And that's all the things that the city provides. That's, the last, amendment to the urban growth boundary was for the industrial park. It was specifically for that and that alone, pretty much, in the airport. So, to your point, yes, from a planning perspective, it helps us, but it's really nothing to do with annexation. It's preparing our county for the growth that we see coming.
It's really supposed to be where you can annex and where you can't annex.
Well, that was,
Until the referendum,
that law's been in existence since the 50s.
well, I know, but they took away annexation by ordinance.
Right.
So, I guess, my question is, and this, Joe, you might know how the law reads better than I do. Once we decide on Charleston, Cleveland, on those new urban growth boundaries and how they're changed, if we designated everything outside of that as rural, would y'all still be able to do the referendum annexations in that rural area?
I would have to study that.
Yeah, me too. Because that might satisfy Tom's concerns without an interlocal agreement.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a vote, and I don't necessarily speak for the council nor the mayor. I can tell you from just how difficult the process is and how it's not good public policy, we have no interest in doing an annexation by referendum again.
So then back to
If this gets approved.
back to my original question, if this was the planned area going forward and everybody agreed to it, then Bentley could go on his idea of where to plan county growth. Charleston could go on their plan with where they're going to do Charleston growth, and the city of Cleveland could plan, and then everybody stay in their lane. Yeah. And everybody would agree to that. And if that were the truth, then along with what Mr. Kreis said, would everybody be willing to sign off that everybody agrees to stay in their lane for at least the next 10 years?
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak from that's a legislative question from the bodies that, from each municipality and the county. So I think it's a reasonable thought that we should consider, state law dictates all sorts of things that we can do, and there's a lot of tools within it for us to use, and I'm not just saying from a city perspective, it's, so that is one of the tools that we used, based on the conditions that were outdated. And so if the conditions are up to date, it's very likely that we would not see that as a necessary tool.
Okay, so then, I mean, to go back to what Dr. Cash said, then everybody can start to really plan out.
That is what our driving force is.
One really, really important question, and Chairman Molinax will chime in on this. The reason that, as far as the rural and as far as the concern with, is Cleveland Utilities has no interest or probably even capability of going past those lines that are on those things. I think you guys looked out 50 years. We're not, that it's not practical or feasible for the infrastructure you have. I mean, and that's why we can almost assure anyone that we're not really going to go past our utility district boundaries, because it's just not economically feasible to do that.
The three annexations that are referenced in the referendum process are all within this existing boundary.
So what I'm saying is your line is really the line that we really can't go across because we can't provide services out.
You are correct. In our world, we have started a process of looking at I would consider hopefully close to finite boundary for providing public sewer, and it's within this area that you see, and it's governed by topography. We also have water service areas that go as far as Charleston. Kind of area up. We provide water to Walker Valley School and beyond. So we have water service areas that are already in existence that far outside of our sewer service areas. So we adopted a plan to set a boundary for sanitary sewer. And you can see that if you saw a sewer map, I mean, some of these boundaries that we've got outlined that we're finalizing a master plan on are still extremely far out there. And there's a lot of investment just to get those out there. So, but it has defined a boundary and that was internal discussion. Somebody's got to come up with a boundary for planning for future and the growth that is coming daily and weekly and requests that we're getting. And, so we established that with our consultant, and it's very close to where the city's boundary is. They kind of chose roads. We chose hilltops just because of sewer drains downhill and some.
So just to crystallize that, anything beyond the purple boundary that Cleveland Utilities had, that the city has city has went and looked, is most of those lines are on these ridges that you're not getting sewer over them. There's not enough economics available to get over some of those. Is if you're worried about further migration of city boundaries outside of what's on that, it's not functionally feasible as far as we know it with the technology we have today that you would ever go past that. So as far as whether it's a rural boundary or whether it's interlocal agreement, is we just don't have the ability to or have the mechanism that people can provide sewer and I think what Craig said, it's also water. It's not in their water bound district, so that creates problems as well.
That is correct. So, any other questions regarding the map in this particular topic? One thing that I would point out, I know it's 5:15, but there's also included, I believe, in everyone's information, the City of Cleveland Urban Growth Boundary Expansion Report. So that is something that I would encourage. Do you want to talk about that now, or do you want to just have everybody?
This is, it's in draft form still,
Okay.
and will be finalized once we have a clear picture of what the boundary, is. It's based on, existing services and the, expansion of them. And it's more just for your reading pleasure, and then we will get in depth on it, at one of these next few meetings.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I guess from my perspective, I would like to hear from the board. I think the city has explained this, and I'm sure they would be glad to explain or try to answer any questions, anything else that anyone has. But okay.
Once again, we've heard, and we've heard it before, but I think the most important thing that we've heard here today is that this is not an annexation tool. It is a planning tool. And as Dr. Cash said, other plans need to be developed, but it's difficult to develop those plans when you don't know the area that you're developing them for. So I think it's just very important that we all leave here with the understanding that it is a planning tool, not an annexation tool. And once again, I would add that in the state of Tennessee, we no longer have forced annexation. The only way property can be annexed is if the owner of the property requests that annexation. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you, Ken. So, that, as Adam brought up, we need to move towards, in my mind, some type of a consensus on the boundary, working towards a boundary so we can take something to a public meetings and things like that. But I would like the group to, if between now and our next meeting or in the next couple of weeks, we just need to get to the point to answer everyone's question, to be able to make a decision, informed decision, and bring it to some type of a vote, and then see where it goes from there. We've got it. We've got a proposal. It's laid out. I think it's been explained, hopefully pretty well. But if we need to explain, answer any of these questions, the connection of annexation concerns, I know that's all there. But from our perspective at Cleveland Utilities, we're getting requests for properties to be taken in how to provide services, and they're not in the urban growth boundary of anybody anymore. They're not in Charleston's urban growth boundary. They're not in the city of Cleveland, Bradley County's urban. They're not anywhere. They're just out there, and people are wanting to grow outside of these areas, and they're wanting. The key is sewer, public sewer, and they're wanting that sewer out there, and it's very challenging for us. Can we make it happen? Sure. It's costly to do that, but then it's hard to do that because we don't have some things in place and things like that. So we went ahead and started planning, and we would like to do the same here if we can. So in the near future, is there anything anybody needs to see or understand or whatever that we could have staff bring to us?
I'm fine if you present this one for a public hearing. And
Okay.
let's hear what the public has to say. I mean, I don't know that it's a good use of our time to redo this map that you have provided, and then we hear from the city, and the city wants it, or we hear from the residents in the community, and then they want it changed again. Why would we not just present this and hear what the residents have to say in a public forum?
I think Bentley and I are gonna try to get with the city of Charleston and make sure that they're included within what we're presenting, and that's,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's what I was fixing to say.
yeah. So, but otherwise,
Yeah, I wouldn't, other than if Charleston wants you to do something different, I wouldn't spend our time changing this till after a public hearing.
I have a follow-up to that too. In addition to the public hearing, Adam, thanks for bringing that up earlier. Could we not just add to our current agendas to all meetings, just one of them as public comment? I see, Amy Conley Moore was here earlier. There are,
they're all technically public meetings as advertised. It's just
but if we had it on the agenda as a moment for the
public
chairman,
hearing, yeah.
public comments, if there is someone here at
I'll
every
include it.
meeting going forward, and then we could very clearly say, we have asked for as much public. I regret that we didn't do that 2 meetings ago.
And we can make sure Grant gets it in the newspaper as well with his article. I think he had to leave, but
Is this map online?
No.
How quickly can it be put online? High quality PDF, zoom in to street level.
Yeah, well, I'll have to get with IT on exactly what, size it'll be, but yeah.
I mean, that first of all would be something I think is going to be helpful for us because
We could
although we saw a
probably-
larger version, you know, I know general street names, but yeah. It would be nice to have that online,
We may
but
include it in our GIS portal
Yeah.
online, which is very functional.
I guess my only other question is what are we going to be doing next week? Can we schedule and have a public hearing that quickly? Because I'm with Commissioner Slater. I know of no reason to amend what I see on paper right now. But I want, before we finalize, or I vote to finalize a proposal to the municipalities and the county commission, want to hear from the public. So I don't really know, unless we're prepared to do that next week, my question is, what is next week's meeting about?
I think it would be good for the committee to not finalize this, but to agree to proceed with the plan that's been presented and take it to a public meeting, so at least they know the committee's understanding of the map as been presented. A draft plan or something like that.
We would have the ability after a public hearing to make changes before submitting to the municipalities and the county?
Exactly. This is
Okay.
just all still a work in progress, but
Well,
I
then,
just, yes.
would it be appropriate to make the motion that we accept this draft as a committee for the purpose of moving forward with a public hearing at our next meeting?
I would entertain the motion, yes. Okay, I have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion on the motion?
Could I amend my motion? I would like to give Charleston the opportunity to be included in this. So the draft would need to include their input and their request as well.
So is our meeting next week going to be to discuss Charleston's input? Charleston needs to come next week with their input and be able to speak to it.
Yeah, well, like Rob said, we'll get with Mayor Lattimore and come up with a plan for up there. But they also need to get their city council together to appoint 2 new members to the board because they have no representation right now.
It's actually just one,
Okay.
and it's by default it is the Charleston mayor
Okay.
unless he chooses a designee, and the designee would have to be approved by the
So he's on it right now.
Charleston Commission. So
He's on it right now.
by default, you could
Okay.
join us right now.
Is there an opportunity to ask the state for an extension on submitting the plan?
I am not aware of that. I'm going to defer to,
It's just written that you've got 6 months, and I don't believe there's any, I think it would take 6 months to get an answer on that question.
That's
just
6
to
months,
submit.
not to submit to the state, but to submit to the municipalities and the county. We have till the end of December to give something. to those bodies.
In existence for 26 years, they've not extended that period.
I guess maybe it's just me, but I feel pretty ill prepared to move forward to making decisions and to submit something to the municipality feels like basically we're just not ready. Maybe after the next meeting we'll have more clarification, but I just feel like without having public meetings under our belt, and so then in December we would have to submit, and it feels pretty up in the air, I guess, with not having some of the input from the community as the landowners, as well as being thoroughly informed, in my opinion. And part of that is my fault for not being able to be here the last.
Dr. Cash, I can assure you that once we get to the end of this, And we get the input, at least based on my experience last time, and there is a lot of input from the public. You know, the process will get to the point, just like at the Spring Branch area that finally got approved. There was a lot of work to go into it, but we got to that point where we took the final vote at the very end and recommended it be sent to, and
keep in
it,
mind, Chairman, that the
yeah.
annexation laws in Tennessee were completely different the last time we
That-
did this. I mean, there was a legitimate different, feeling. This isn't, you know, focused on that, but before, it used to be. That's what it was for.
that's correct, but, so, I have a,
So quick question, I don't want to rush this, but I want to move us towards actually making some progress. Can city and county staff, in conjunction with Mayor Lattimore, in a week's time, come back next week at our scheduled meeting with an updated, I guess it would be draft 4 of a proposal that would include Charleston's request as well? Okay.
I think that's feasible.
Then I think that if that's the case, I would withdraw my motion and be prepared to make that after we've heard and seen Charleston's request next week.
is that acceptable with everyone? Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Well,
Our,
Yes.
No.
It would be, we'd have to agree on the draft.
that is correct.
Okay.
It would be, I would recommend, like we did last time, it would be an evening meeting to afford more people to come, you know, if you, 4 o'clocks don't work, okay? So the next meeting would be the 24th, and you'll work between now and then to do what Adam requested. And we'll look for seeing if the room's open on the 13th of November. Is it-
I will follow up with everybody tomorrow on that date.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Is there any, let me look, see if there's anything else. Is there anything, any other comments, any other thoughts from any members? Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn? Do I have a second? All right. Thank you for, every.